Chapter 10. At the Feet of the Master. Since I became his humble disciple, I had the good fortune to be with him and to serve him for 2 years. Thus writes Swami Abhedananda. From this statement, it appears to us that Kali Prasad must have come into Sri Ramakrishna's contact during the early months of 1884 and remained with him until August 1886, when the master passed away into great illumination. When in April 1885, Sri Ramakrishna fell seriously ill, it is on record that Kali Prasad was among those who remained with him constantly and nursed him wholeheartedly. So let us now follow the events of this period which are memorable in his life. Memorable in this sense, that this constant association with the Master for a period of a full year and 4 months must have provided him with an opportunity to learn and realize many things in his spiritual pursuit. In his autobiographical narration, Swami Abhedananda has given an indication, though brief, of what he exactly learnt at the feet of his Master. I learned from Sri Ramakrishna that Veda, or dualistic philosophy, leads to Vishishta Advaita philosophy of Ramanuja, in search after the ultimate truth of the universal, which is one and the absolute, Brahman. And that the search after truth ends in the realization of the oneness of the jiva, or individual soul, the Jagat, the world, and the Ishvara, God, in Brahman, as taught in the Advaita philosophy of Vedanta. And that they are the different steps in the path of realization of the absolute truth of Brahman. We notice 3 main factors operating on and molding the character of our subject during the formative period of his religious life. His wanton spiritual tendency, his awareness of his real nature, along with his passion for studies, and lastly, the guidance of Sri Ramakrishna, who pointed to him the path of certainty and bliss. He had, as we have indicated, some innate spiritual qualities, as reflected in his intense thirst to know God, his quest for a real yogi, and his taking shelter at the feet of the Master at Dakshineswar. Passion for study was a special trait of Swami Abhedananda's nature, as it was with Swami Vivekananda. In fact, among all his disciples, only these 2, Vivekananda and Abhedananda, exhibited this passion in a remarkable degree, and this finally enabled them to encompass all knowledge, Eastern and Western, philosophical as well as scientific. At that time, writes Swami Abhedananda, I began to devote myself to self-education and study Gonto's physics, Herschel's astronomy, John Stuart Mill's logic, and 3 essays on religion, Herbert Spencer's First Principles in Psychology, Hamilton's Philosophy, and Lew's History of Philosophy, and attended the courses of lectures at the Science Association, which had been established by Dr. Mahendra Lal Sarkar, the famous homeopath. From this statement, it is clear that his range of study varied, and it covered almost the branches, all of them, the branches of knowledge, which the zeal of a true seekers of truth that he was. It was at this time that the idea dawned on him that true philosophy should be the mother of spiritual action, the fountainhead of creative energy, the highest and noblest stimulus to the will. We have noticed in the life of Swami Vivekananda how the abstruse philosophy of Herbert Spencer interested him, and how later on he used the Spencerian mode of reasoning in his argumentations on the more abstruse doctrines of the Upanishads and Vedanta. It is equally true in the case of Swami Abhedananda. The study of Spencer had equally helped him in gaining that power of thought, penetrating discrimination and spirit of search for a scientific basis, which stood him in good stead in delivering the message of Vedanta in later years, as in the case of Vivekananda. But the philosophy of Spencer could not effect any fundamental change in his earlier conception of religion, nor it could shatter in the least the foundation of his belief, which was built up on the basis of Hindu theology, and which was subsequently strengthened by the teachings of his master. Born of religious-minded parents, Kali Prasad never rebelled against the Hindu social system as Vivekananda did. He remained almost undisturbed amid strong antagonistic feelings that were directed against the religious ideas he picked up in his boyhood days. Thus, the strength and structure of his inner self remained untarnished all through his life, and it was never impregnated with any foreign element, philosophic or otherwise. Living fully in the world of pure intellectuality, Kali Prasad never lost the moorings to find his way to God. He never questioned the existence of God, and the faith in God was inborn with him. God was never a problem with him as it was with Vivekananda, and hence he never experienced any mood, agnostic or otherwise. The quest for truth, therefore, was all along natural with him, natural and spontaneous. His mind was never assailed by doubts, nor he ever was lost in the maze of agnosticism. Though Kali Prasad had great respect for Western material science and its analytical processes, he never used them to test the various supernatural experiences of his master, whom he accepted without questioning. This accounts for the special training he received at the feet of the master during the 2 years of his constant association with him at Dakshineswar, Shayampukur, and finally at Kasapur Garden House. We shall now narrate the story of his spiritual development, stage by stage, directly under the watchful eyes of his master, who had discovered in Kali Prasad a great yogi when he met him for the first time on a memorable Sunday night. Of the stories of his some earlier realizations in the close company of the master at Dakshineswar, we will reproduce here one or two, just to indicate the high level of Kali Prasad's spiritual attainments soon after his initiation. One night, while staying at Dakshineswar, he was attending his master, carefully moving his hands on the outstretched legs of Sri Ramakrishna, who was then resting in his room, lying on his bed. He was all alone with the master, and he considered himself extremely fortunate in having the rare privilege of attending him exclusively. Suddenly, Kali Prasad felt that the physical body of the master was transformed into that of the luminous Divine Mother, and in that transformed state, the master was feeding him with the breast milk as a mother does to her child. Kali Prasad lost his consciousness, and at once he experienced a sort of unspeakable transcendental delight. This was not the only time that he had such a strange experience. In fact, there were at this time innumerable experiences of various types, all of which brought to him in their wake new sensations and new delights. Carrying his mind far above the mundane sphere to the transcendental world is what these visions and experiences did. During this period, as his meditation grew intense day by day, Kali Prasad began to see various sorts of visions in which gods and goddesses appeared before him. One day, at dead of night, it so happened that while absorbed in deep meditation, Kali Prasad, in superconscious state of mind, felt that his soul, coming out of the physical cage, soared high and still higher in the boundless sky, like a bird with outstretched wings. Strange visions began to appear before him, one after another, until the soul reached a beautiful spot where stood a beautiful palace. On entering inside, he saw the vivid revelation of all the religions along with their symbols. Then, as if carried by some great supernatural inspiration, he gradually entered into a large room where all around were seated on high pedestals gods and goddesses, incarnates and prophets, such as all the 10 incarnates, Lord Sri Krishna, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Guru Nanak, Sri Chaitanya, Shankaracharya, and others. There, in the committee of gods and goddesses, he beheld Sri Ramakrishna standing in the center. While he was thus enjoying this superb view, it seemed to him that the figure of the Paramahansa had become effulgent and gigantic. And all the gods and goddesses, as well as the incarnates, stood up from their respective seats, and one by one they merged into the body of Sri Ramakrishna. Later on, when Kali Prasad referred to his master about this strange vision, Ramakrishna is reported to have told the disciple, "You have been fortunate enough to see for yourself the Vaikuntha, the abode of the Lord Vishnu. So you have crossed the bounds of the finite into the infinite. It was from that time onwards that whenever meditating, Kali Prasad never experienced the sight of any finite form of the divine. His mind would invariably merge into the infinite. This strange realization of the Vaikuntha has been subsequently recorded by Swami Abhedananda in his hymn to Sri Ramakrishna, which is a superb piece of composition in Sanskrit. Kali Prasad had the privilege of the master's company not only at Dakshineswar, but also at various places in Calcutta, whenever Sri Ramakrishna visited the places of his selected householder devotees, such as Ramchandra Datta, Suresh Mitra, Balaram Bose, and others. At Kankurgachi, Bagbazar in Simla, there were the places which Sri Ramakrishna visited most frequently. Dakshineswar was a little ways from Calcutta, and it was not always possible for his devotees and their relatives and friends to go there to have the blessed darshan of Sri Ramakrishna. And this was perhaps one of the reasons why he frequently undertook his journey to the metropolis. His occasional visits to Calcutta also afforded an opportunity to such eminent persons as Pratap Chandra Manzumdar, Shivanath Sastri, Pandit Sesadar Tarka Churamani, and many others to come to him. Kali Prasad, who always kept information of his Calcutta visits, never missed a chance of having the company of the master, who was always pleased to see his chosen disciple by his side. It was the month of May, 1885. The day was Saturday, and it came to the house of Ramchandra Datta, Ramakrishna that was, who was a distant relative of Swami Vivekananda. Kali Prasad, who had been to Dakshineswar on that day, accompanied the master. A large number of people had then gathered at the house of Datta. Sri Ramakrishna entered into the room and took his seat. He then cast his glance hither and thither, as if in search of somebody. "Where is Naren?" He was referring to this future Swami Vivekananda. He asked this eagerly. "I do not find him here." Now the house of Ramchandra Datta was not far from that of Vishwanath Datta, which was Vivekananda's father. It was in the same locality, and as such, Sri Ramakrishna was sure to find his beloved Naren there. Naren also knew that the master would be coming there. He too, like Kali Prasad, never missed a chance of having the company of the master during Ramakrishna's visits to Calcutta. The master was informed that Naren was somewhat indisposed due to terrible headache. The news itself was too much for the master to bear, and he became very anxious to see Naren. So he again implored, "Do ask him to come here." Then Kali Prasad, accompanied by Niranjan and some others, went to Vishwanath Datta's house to bring Naren. There they found Naren lying on a cot with a wet napkin placed on his forehead, inside a room where doors and windows were all closed. He was writhing in pain. It was Kali Prasad who talked to him. The master has come at Ram Babu's place. He is very anxious to meet you, so we are here at his bidding to fetch you. I am having a great pain now due to headache. I can scarcely open my eyes, not to speak of moving out. I cannot stand the light at this time. Would you therefore tender my respects to the master, telling him that it is impossible for me to go there? Thus said Naren slowly and with great difficulty. But the master is anxious to see you. You must go. We will see to it. How can I go when I cannot open my eyes? In that case, we shall lead you carefully to his place. Naren then agreed and stood up with the wet napkin still on his forehead. Kali Prasad and Niranjan helped him to stand up. They then escorted him slowly and tenderly towards the house of Ramchandra Datta, where Sri Ramakrishna, surrounded by his devotees, was waiting for Naren. It was a fairly big parlor, and the Paramahansa was seated in the center. Presently, making their way through the crowd, arrived Kali Prasad and Niranjan, along with Naren, who was placed just in front of the master. All eyes were then fixed to him, and everyone saw how affectionately he received Naren. He touched Naren's head with his own hands, and the moment he felt the touch of the lotus hand of Sri Ramakrishna on his head, all his pains vanished, and he astonishedly cried out, "What have you done? All my pains have vanished as if by magic. How wonderful it is!" Kali Prasad read in the life of Christ such incidents of healing by touch. Now he saw for the first time the same miracle happening before his own eyes. Sri Ramakrishna seldom exhibited such supernatural powers, but when he did it, it silently proclaimed his spiritual power in a degree which was beyond the comprehension of those around him. The pain being over, Naren was requested by the master to sing a song. Naren had a sweet voice and could sing very well. Kali Prasad had heard of the gift of music in him, but so far he had no fortune to hear him singing. So this particular occasion afforded him an opportunity for which he was long eager. Someone brought a tampura, and Naren began to play on it. He then began to sing in his sweet voice, which charmed the audience, and which also made Sri Ramakrishna lose his consciousness at once. The performance went for 3 hours, and Naren did not feel the least tired. How it was possible for one laid down by headache to sing for 3 hours? It was therefore a matter of surprise and delight for all who were present there on that day. Then, with the approach of the evening, there began kirtan, which presented a delightful sight which Kali Prasad never forgot in his life. As the kirtan reached its tempo, suddenly Sri Ramakrishna stood up and began to dance like a mad lion. And as he danced, it seemed to Kali Prasad that the entire surrounding was completely changed, and the room itself had acquired motion. Time, space, and the persons present, everything underwent a complete change, which cannot be appropriately described in words. A few days after this experience, it so happened that Kali Prasad met Naren at Dakshineswar, and both of them fell into an intimate conversation about their respective progress on the path to spiritual realization and the uplifting of their soul. Did you ever experience any inner conflict before you accepted him as the master? Abruptly asked Kali Prasad. Naren, who was then in a very quiet and peaceful state of mind, began to recount some of the earlier incidents of his life since he came in contact of Sri Ramakrishna. Though I considered him to be a madman, I was at a loss to account for the strange feeling of blessedness that came over me as I sat near the master. Everything about him, the number of adoring devotees, the unaccountable religious exaltation of the Paramahansa, his return from ecstasy, his words, were bewildering to me. But in spite of the impression made by the master, I was slow to accept him as my teacher. When I came here for the first time, I found the master sitting alone on a small bedstead in his room. He was glad to see me, and calling me affectionately to his side, made me sit before him on his bed. Presently I found him overcome with a sort of emotion, and his eyes were fixed on me. He slowly drew me near. Then, in the twinkling of an eye, he placed his right foot on my body. The touch at once gave rise to a novel experience within me. With my eyes open, I saw that the walls and everything in the room whirled rapidly and vanished into naught, and the whole universe, together with my individuality, was about to merge in the all-encompassing mysterious void. After a while, he struck my chest when I came back to my normal sense. All this, believe me, Kali, happened in less than a few minutes, but at the same time, it revolutionized my mind. Yet I can confess to you that I was in a dilemma about the real nature of my experience, as well as the truth about this remarkable man, who seemed to me pure and simple as a child. I had still my hesitations to accept him as the incarnation of God. On another occasion, the master had told me that I was a sage in my previous birth. It took me a pretty long time before I began to regard Sri Ramakrishna as God incarnate. And since then, I came to realize that a guru is necessary in the quest of the soul. Kali Prasad was hearing all this almost spellbound. And as he looked at the glowing face of his brother disciple, he could easily realize that just as he himself belonged to the master from the moment Ramakrishna touched him, so it was with Naren. Is it any wonder, therefore, that both of them were destined to become the greatest disciples of Sri Ramakrishna? You are sure, my brother, to transcend all limitations and become a spiritual giant. So said Kali Prasad to Naren, who was very much pleased to hear such encouraging words from one who himself was another chosen disciple of the Master. But he added, only if the Master continues to guide and instruct me with love and patience. And it is on record that both Vivekananda and Abhedananda were the recipients of infinite love and grace from their living master, and with it began a new chapter in their lives. But that is a story often told. During their training under the master, the story of their lives is to be told in terms of ideas and realizations. The relationship between the guru and the disciples was really wonderful, and the full account of it can never be given. Sri Ramakrishna, who always felt deep love for these two, regarded them as two great souls reborn to fulfill a great mission in this life. Great teachers realize the highest spiritual truth, and when they came in touch with a fit disciple, are eager to impart that truth. And it did not take a long time for Sri Ramakrishna to recognize from the very beginning the spiritual potential of both Naren and Kali Prasad. One was a sage and the other a yogi in their previous life. His love for both was therefore so deep that if either of them failed to come to Dakshineswar for some days, he would become restless and disconsolate. Did he not weep and pray to the Divine Mother, begging her to make Naren come? Did he not provide Kali Prasad with passage to enable him to come to his place? So we hear Naren telling at that time to Kali Prasad, it is his unbounded love for me that binds me to him. The same was true with Kali Prasad. During the 2 years of his discipleship, Kali Prasad was not only a regular visitor to Dakshineswar, but he left his home and hearth also to remain his constant companion from the time the master fell ill. And by remaining in the close and effulgent presence of Sri Ramakrishna, Kali Prasad had the unique advantage of going through the practice of severe spiritual discipline within a short space of time. For 2 years, he had the blessed company of his master. This was a period of silent realization, silent teaching, and silent assimilation. Every time Kali Prasad visited Dakshineswar, it was a stirring event both to himself and to the master, making the intensification of their relationship and the absorption of the ideas and ideals on the part of the disciple. Gradually, he was becoming saturated with spirituality. The all-merciful Guru gave to the disciple all that was to be given, all that he had, as he had done in the case of his beloved spiritual son, Naren. The biographers of Swami Vivekananda have stated that Sri Ramakrishna was like the one who had struggled hard amidst almost inseparable difficulties to acquire a great treasure, and Naren was the son and heir who was to reap the treasure. Sri Ramakrishna had built up a great spiritual empire in lust and gold by conquering the dangerous invaders. Naren was to extend this empire over the earth. Sri Ramakrishna had dived deep. He had dived deep, deep down into the spiritual ocean. Naren was to show to the world the treasures which the Master had found therein. Sri Ramakrishna was the realization and insight, and Naren was to become the utterance thereof. This statement is also equally true in respect of Swami Abhedananda, whose life was, in fact, a living commentary of his master, whose life appeared to him as the gateway to all spiritual ends. In another sense, the life of Swami Abhedananda could be regarded as the supplement to that of his master. For it was Kali Prasad who perhaps best realized Sri Ramakrishna as the remaker and preserver of the Hindu Dharma, of which Abhedananda himself, in his mature years, became a high priest. In short, the greatness of Sri Ramakrishna was as much reflected in the life and activities of Vivekananda as it was in the life and activities of Abhedananda. They were the twin sparks born of the religious dynamo of Ramakrishna, destined to ignite millions of hearts in India and abroad. One afternoon, while he was attending on his master, Kali Prasad wanted to know from him the true nature of meditation, which had all along been a special feature of his spiritual practice. The teacher, who was a past master in meditation, told his inquisitive disciple some truth about meditation, which is worth reproducing here. In the master's own words, as depicted by Swami Abhedananda in his book, Memoirs of Ramakrishna. Perfect concentration of the mind is necessary. Mind is like the flame of a lamp. When the wind of desire blows, it becomes restless. When there is no wind, it is steady. The latter is the state of the mind of the yogi. At the time of true meditation, the body becomes absolutely motionless like a statue, and senses become inactive. Meditation is possible even with eyes wide open, even when one is conversing with another. If you have true concentration on God, your mind will remain fixed even when your body is moving or you are speaking. He who meditates upon God for a long time gets divine grace in his soul. On another occasion, Kali Prasad heard his master telling Naren the necessity of having spiritual awakening first to have the experience of reality. The subject was intricate, but the lucid exposition of Sri Ramakrishna impressed Kali Prasad so much that in his latter years, whenever referring to the master, he would invariably remark, "He was all knowledge." He remembered all through his life what the master told him during the early days of his spiritual apprenticeship under his feet. One must have an awakening of the spirit within to see reality, to have the realization of the universal spirit. It is the spirit that can realize the spirit. Such and many other teachings have their desired effect in helping the young aspirant to grow beyond the confinement of the utmost spiritual hopes. The time with the master was drawing to an end. It was in the middle of 1885 that Sri Ramakrishna showed the first symptoms of throat trouble, which ultimately ended in the fatal cancer. He suffered so much from the intense heat of the summer that he began to use ice. After a month or two, he developed pain in his throat, which was aggravated by talking and samadhi. These words Swami Abhedananda has recorded in his memoirs that it was about this time, in June 1885, that Sri Ramakrishna attended the Vaishnava festival at Panahati, which he used to attend every year. Some of his devotees cautioned him not to attend the festival this year in view of his pain in the throat. But the master heeded not, and so a boat was hired in which Kali Prasad, along with Latu Maharaj, another intimate devotee, accompanied the master while the other devotees went in another boat. The whole day was spent in singing and dancing, and often the master went into samadhi. The party returned to Dakshineswar in the late hours of the evening, and the coldness aggravated his disease, which was diagnosed by the doctors at first as clergyman's sore throat. The disciples and the devotees all alike became anxious, and when it was finally realized that the sore throat had turned into cancer, their anxiety knew no bounds. It was during this time that Naren is reported to have remarked to his brother disciples in the following words: "I am afraid the object of our love and adoration will not live for long." It was then that the master could be prevailed upon to move out of Dakshineswar for regular treatment. Thus he was brought to Calcutta, where he stayed for 3 months in a rented house at Shyampukur. Dr. Mahendralal Sakar, the eminent homeopath, began to treat him. This was the last journey of Sri Ramakrishna from Dakshineswar, and as usual, Kali Prasad and Latu Maharaj accompanied him. It was from this time till the final hour, almost all his disciples constantly remained with him. Their leader, Naren, organized the nursing, while Sharada Devi, the spiritual wife, came from Dakshineswar to do the cooking, to which the master had strongly objected. While companionship with Sri Ramakrishna and the wholehearted service to him gave the disciples increased faith and devotion, they were inwardly getting ready for the inevitable to come. When there was no appreciable improvement, the master was removed to Kasipur Garden House, to the north of Calcutta. He was now practically in the deathbed. Day after day, the body of the master grew weaker and weaker. The boys, his chosen disciples, Naren, Rakal, Babaram, Niranjan, Jogin, Latu, Tarak, Gopal, Kali, Sasi, and Sarat, gave all their time in nursing him. The last days of his life were practically spent alone with these young men who were to become the future torchbearers of his message. Every one of them was a tower of strength in consecration and single-minded devotion. The Kasipur Garden House became a temple and a university hall in one. At times, philosophy held the floor. Again, devotion rose high. Singing and chanting would fill the time that could be snatched out from nursing. The master would send his disciples to meditate. Thus the days at Kasipur passed in devotion, in service, in sorrow, in ecstasy. And as the last days were approaching, the master set himself with great energy than ever to mold, in calm and silent way, the spiritual life of his disciples, particularly those of Naren and Kali Prasad. It was the 16th of August, 1886, that Sri Ramakrishna passed into Mahasamadhi, from which he never returned to this mortal plane of existence, leaving behind him a little band of disconsolate disciples who were to prove themselves as his worthy spiritual sons by their renunciation and selfless work for the betterment of humanity at large.